Hi, my name is Hameed, and I will be presenting the pictorial Disconnecting towards a semiotic framework for personal data trails on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Stephen Snow, Scott Heiner, and Dr. Ben Matthews from the University of Queensland. This pictorial is part of a broader research program that explores how to make designerly practices, tools, and methods easier to understand and use by non-designers. As we move towards an increasingly interconnected world, the notion of us as individuals having any semblance of control over our digital footprint and resulting data trails becomes increasingly complicated. Our material worlds are so interwoven with technology that they mediate most of our daily interactions, accessing personal data through a myriad of touchpoints and embedded technologies. These data trails are generated in our daily commutes, as well as when we are at home consuming media. However, what is problematic is the fact that getting consent through individual notifications at different touchpoints is generally not effective, uninformative, or can easily be ignored. In saying this, there are, however, certain signs and signifiers that are ubiquitously understood and used across different touchpoints. One such example is the play symbol for consuming media. It is universally understood and used across different media. So what if we could harness the power of such aids for making personal data trails visible to the users? Popular semiotic conventions used today include the likes of Creative Commons symbols for intellectual property rights and usage, packaging symbols for how to dispose materials, as well as traffic symbols to moderate behavior on the road. All these examples use simple indicators that communicate detailed information about different aspects of a system. Drawing inspiration from semiotic conventions and treating our data trails holistically, we explore how can we engage users in a whole data trail perspective that can be used to create semiotic conventions as a more effective means to informed consent as opposed to the individual notifications prevalent today. To do this, we ran a probe-based study with 5 participants who were tasked to document their personal data trails and digital footprints across 3 contexts: their daily commute, their media consumption, and notifications received. The participants were all familiar with the concept of digital footprints and had prior experience participating in research activities. Participants mapped out their interactions visually, followed by annotations of what they saw as different data collection touchpoints. They generated ideas of what indicators could be used at these touchpoints and reflected on what ramifications it would have if these ideas were executed in the real world. We took the probe returns and collated them into a coherent data comic narrative. We adopted the increasingly popular data comic framing for ease of understanding and familiarity of form for end users. This approach allowed us to critically reflect on the scenarios and get access to the design context visually, which opened up more avenues of reflection on the data compared to text-based analysis formats. Here we have an excerpt of a journey of a parent dropping their child off to the school before going to their place of work. This was constructed using different participant journeys, which can be seen here in the annotations onto the frame, where different elements within the panels were informed by the original probe returns. So what does this mean for whole data trails? Location-based tracking of data might be something we are aware of, especially when using public transport and map-based apps. So we know when we use our phones on a bus, it sends location data to the map provider. However, what we might not realize is the different data nodes across the journey, such as car terminals or CCTV footage, or even when we re-enter our homes, the data trail nodes have become so pervasive that the amount of connected devices that are tracking and logging activity within a household ranges from everything, including your computers and your phones, to the Wi-Fi routers channeling internet traffic. This frame gives an example of how many different touch points might exist in a modern household. This gets further multiplied when we account for the different people within a household. So things like your television consumption might be communal, but individual consumption media like reading ebooks on a tablet or listening to music on your phone can be sourced back to that individual router or IP node. So there can be passive or incidental sharing of data as well. Through these explorations, we generated a portfolio of different signs that can serve as provocations to how we might approach designing such a system for informed consent. These include symbols for distribution, access, identifiability, perpetual tracking, forms of consent, and data modification. So for distribution symbols where data is on-shared at collector nodes, different symbols can represent data shared with the government for, say, public security reasons versus that shared with private organizations for monetization, marketing, or market research purposes. Similarly, different symbols may be used to highlight different formats, for example, photos, video, audio, as well as what is identifiable, re-identifiable, or anonymized data. So revisiting our question of how can we engage users in a whole data trail perspective and semiotic conventions for developing better systems of informed consent. If we look at an example of commuting in a busy public subway station, a familiar, seemingly unobtrusive environment, there are a lot of different data collection nodes present. Everything from the CCTV to the ticketing machines to the entry gates, our mobile devices, as well as those of passerbys are present. If we wanted to map out our indicators here, we could present a more holistic picture of how these data collection nodes operate and what symbols might be appropriate as indicators of data collection. This structure of the data comic framing allows us to study the space beyond just a scenario, but use it as a visual, reflexive, analytic tool, which is accessible to the designers, but also users who are familiar with conventional comics, opening up the possibility for a dialogue between the end users and designers about this concept. So collectively thinking not just about what notifications could exist, but also mapping them out onto specific locations and contexts gives a deeper, richer understanding of the space. However, this does not need to stop with the current systems of data trail generation, but we can also apply this approach for near future applications of data to understand how we are modifying consent using speculative design fictions. Within this pictorial, we present two design fictions, Facebook and Neighborhood Watch. Facebook is a social media service for appliances where devices talk to each other and document and share energy consumption patterns, give ads for maintenance and other services, and share consumption metrics with your peers. While Neighborhood Watch is a community energy policing system that allows individuals to socially police their neighbors' energy consumption or even anonymously complain about their consumption to the local authorities. Exploring speculated scenarios like this visually and exploring how our holistic data trails can be made more visible to users in current and near future systems allows us to improve the effectiveness of informed consent within emerging technologies and enable the design of more democratic systems of the future. Thank you for listening. We encourage you to read the full pictorial and would be delighted to hear your feedback and thoughts about what we as a community can do to address this wicked problem. Feel free to reach out to us and continue the conversation. Thank you.